these so that if you ever want to go back and watch, you can do so, just to kind of refresh yourself. So jumping into our first community of practice of the year for our CLSD UIN grant, in years 1 and 2, we made site-based literacy teams. So Brandy, Miss Antoinette can speak to that. They created goals for literacy for their systems. They picked a signature innovation. They designated a literacy innovation coordinator, and they identified a QOZ community partner. Okay. And so I've talked to you all about that as well, but that is a community partner that's going to attend at least one a month of your literacy team meetings, where we're just sharing information around literacy progress. If you're not making progress, we're sharing that and talking about what our next steps are so that we do make progress. And this person is really intended to kind of go out in the community and spread all the good work that you're doing at your schools and your systems. Which takes us to year 3. And so for cohort 1 schools, they're going to continue to implement and track that signature innovation. They're going to continue to meet in their site-based literacy teams with that partner. And then for you guys, all my new ones, this is you. Cohort 2 schools, we're going to start and track the progress of an innovation. Each of you have named an innovation. Today, COP is really going to dig more into what kind of materials can I use? How am I going to track that? Where does this fit into my day? You're going to form, if you don't already have one, a site-based literacy team and invite that QOZ partner that I talked about. You do not have to make a separate structure for a literacy team meeting. It can exist inside of an ILT if you already have that happening, but you do need to talk around literacy data on your campus. You're going to continue to make adjustments to your site-based literacy plans throughout the year. You're going to see that it's a living document, and that we're going to continue to make adjustments, especially in SSI. A lot of our SSI work together is going to be around developing that. And you're going to attend that School Support Institute to help. Our outcomes for today are that you're going to be able to determine how to implement and track that innovation by identifying the materials you need, the schedule of the modality, and those tracking measures. So here's our agenda. We're going to review some non-negotiables real quick. We're going to talk more about those site-based literacy teams, and then we'll get into the dirty work of the materials, the structures, and the tracking. We'll also talk about additional considerations just to make sure that your innovation is the best it can be. I'm going to give you some time to collaborate with each other, ask any questions you might have, and then we'll do a closure. Okay, so most of you, I have 15 LEAs. 13 of the 15 LEAs are doing this pre-teaching innovation. The justification for it is that when we're intervening after a lesson, the student has already struggled and feels defeated. This innovation is intended to prevent that from happening, and it's especially effective with our Ls and our students with disabilities or exceptionalities, which cause most of the labels that happen under this UIN umbrella. The literacy plan, as we're developing it, should have these things in the literacy plan. If you're a K-3 school, you already had to do a literacy plan, and it should be posted to your school's website. But we do have quite a few middle and high this year, which I'm super excited about as well. So we want to make sure that we have how we're going to do this. Are we doing it pull out? Are we doing it small group? Are we doing it whole class? What tracking measures are we using to determine if it's successful or not? That's going to be in our literacy plan. And a targeted differentiation that we have happening, and the communication plan for key players. How are you communicating your efforts and your results to the community, to teachers, to the district, to students, making the students part of that as well. And then here we have St. Mary. They are doing, like I said, as you become more proficient, if most of you are doing the pre-teaching, as you become more proficient, we can start diving into some of these other innovations as well. So the justification for the case manager is that we need to navigate a system of care to ensure students are accessing the appropriate and available resources. We have all of these things available. And sometimes we have different kinds of teachers. We have new to teaching, we have alt cert, we have just new to maybe that grade level, new to the school, new to the district. And it's hard for everybody to always make sure they have their hands on all of the resources and know what all of the resources are. So this case manager is one more level of person who can make sure they advocate for those children. So the case manager is going to follow the student from year to year. They kind of have a good sense of who that student is holistically, attendance data, behavior data, literacy data, other grades, kind of all of those things, and they know the child so that if dips happen or if success starts happening, they're kind of paying attention to that and helping to advocate again for them. They advocate and communicate with the student and teachers across the different years. Their caseload is going to be about 5 to 10 students per person. Typically, what I've seen with the case management is that it's usually somebody inside of the school system. Doesn't have to be, but it can be. Counselors, speech pathologists, administrators, any of those people make great case managers. But they'll meet with the students. We'll have to go ahead. These are literacy plan details that have to happen for them. In the literacy plan, we have to have a detail of how the case manager structure will operate. Is it 5 or 10-minute check-ins 2 or 3 times a week? Is it once a week? Is it once every other week? The model for the case managing students from grade level to grade level or as they approach kindergarten. And then the literacy coordinator is the one that's going to help determine what students serve and caseload schedules. And so I always advise starting just because of the load, we're going to start with those well below students and assigning them to somebody on the screener. Or if they're a 3 through 12 student, then looking at those LEAP results, especially those unsat and approaching basic students. Okay, and then here is our EBR, our East Baton Rouge community. They are doing family literacy engagement, and they're doing a fantastic job of it. So the justification for this one is that families need crisis support when the caregiver is experiencing a problem, motivational support when unsure of what to do, and literacy coaching to help with concrete steps. The priority for really all of these is given to students reading below level. Steps can be conducted one-on-one, small or large groups, virtually or in person over multiple sessions. But these sessions with the parents should include these things: joint planning, where we select a practice to focus on, modeling, guided practice, independent application, reflection, and feedback. If the parents knew what to do with their child, they would already be doing it. So this is, does somebody have something to add? No. Okay, I think somebody just is talking. If you do have any questions at all at any point in this, please ask. Happy if I'm going too fast for you and you want me to slow down, let me know that too. But EBR has done a great job of kind of going in and looking at student data to see really where are students struggling inside of the curriculum. They've then made these little modules for the parents, and then they take them in and train them on how to use these different pieces with their children. So it's very intentional. The literacy plan is going to include these things about family literacy engagement, though: the process for recruiting, retaining, training, and supporting family literacy coaches, a strategy that prioritizes family needs, a communication plan, and a proposed schedule for how many times a year they're going to meet. Okay, so those are the 3 innovations. You know which innovation you're doing. Now let's talk about, you really have to be intentional about what you plan, what materials you're using in those innovations. And a great place to start with that and that planning is in your site-based literacy teams or your ILT team. The purpose of these teams is to collaborate with peers and key players to determine if literacy innovations are effective, to determine next steps, and to monitor progress of your signature innovations. The literacy team meetings can happen inside of an existing structure if you already have one, such as that ILT. It is recommended that literacy teams meet weekly, but a minimum of biweekly or twice a month. The QOZ partner is only required to attend monthly, though, and be respectful of their time by placing them either at the beginning or at the end of the meeting where they do that data share and maybe just like some highlights of what you've been working on since last month. Considerations for taking site-based literacy teams a step further, like if you already have your people in your ILT or your literacy team, consider inviting eventually a higher education partner. People across our higher ed partners across the state have really gotten so excited about the literacy work that's happening across the state. They really are asking to become more involved. They're a great partner to have, and especially if you're a middle or a high, and I recommend them for everybody. But especially if you're a middle or a high, they can really speak to what the needs are and helping those students transition to that next step. You could potentially invite a parent and a student where appropriate, if age appropriate and grade appropriate, to get more input on the practices happening across your campus. Okay, so let's talk about what you need to even do these innovations. Because the pre-teaching is the most prevalent, we're going to start there. So pre-teaching can support any literacy component within an ELA lesson, and therefore materials can be pulled to support any of these following things. Foundational skills. So maybe students, you anticipate some struggles with them learning their foundational skills. If it's K2, fluency, background knowledge, vocabulary, grammar and syntax, verbal reasoning skills. So do students know how to make an inference? Can they determine what a metaphor, what's meant by the metaphor language? Any language and skills needed to access that particular standard. So what I mean when I say that is maybe it is a standard they're talking about today about theme, central idea. You can have a little pre-teach that's happening that just does a little deep dive into that before they launch into the lesson. Remember, this is to anticipate any struggle. So should be very short. It should not be extremely long, but we're looking at about 7 to 10 minutes, 15 absolute tops, where we're having like a little mini lesson before the lesson launches. And we're kind of anticipating what struggles are going to happen. And this is part of I think really good teachers do this already anyway, where they anticipate that struggle, they pre-plan for it, and they infuse their lessons with these things. But we're being really intentional about asking ourselves as the teachers are reading through their lesson plan, okay, where might students struggle? It might be, like I said, inside of the standard. It may be inside of just a general literacy skill, such as these different background knowledge, vocabulary, syntax. But you're asking yourself, what are they going to struggle with? And you're pulling materials for that. Let's talk about where you can pull materials from. So most, if not all, of the materials can be found inside of your curricula that you're already using. Some examples are that CKLA has that additional or supplemental materials at the end of every lesson. So it might be that you're reviewing a lesson from the day before and you didn't use those, so you pull those at the end of the previous day's lesson and you use them to launch the next day's lesson. It might mean that you're learning a new skill that day, so you're looking at those again to do. And they also have that assessment and remediation guide where it's just more materials to access that particular skill. Also here, and then EL, you have your microphases. Again, there's tons. EL has chock full of tons of materials to kind of preload there as well. But you're kind of asking yourself again, where might students struggle? You're pulling it out. Consider also different tactile and different things like mirrors. If they're learning a new sound, maybe they need the mirror, do the mouth movements, see themselves doing it, see the teacher doing it, modeling it before they even launch into the lesson. Any of those materials can be used though. In guidebooks, we talked about different things you can target. They already have those fluency tasks built in. They already have knowledge packs. They have language tasks, and they have setting those context videos that can all be found there, and they can all be used as pre-teaching materials and innovations. Is there anybody outside of these curricula that I've mentioned so far? Okay. Not seeing anybody. If I need to go into more detail about a different curriculum, I'm happy to do that with you too. And if this is not enough for you, if you still need more support from me to say this is really how you dig into the materials and pull from, I'm happy to do that with you. We can schedule a one-on-one, and I'm more than happy to help you kind of start looking at examples. This is what it looks like to pull these kinds of materials. We'll sit down in the curriculum together and do that. Okay, so other resources that you can, of course, use are Accelerate materials. The K2 has those foundational pieces in there that you can pull from. There's some knowledge packs, again, for those older grades that you can pull from there. In any science of reading materials. So everybody has either finished their science of reading training or is in their science of reading training if you're a K3 teacher. And this is a great place to go back to pull. If the students are struggling with phonemic awareness, let's go back into those materials and say, okay, what can I bring through here? If it's vocabulary, what vocabulary strategies do they talk about in my science of reading training that I can pull through here? But all of those are fantastic places to go to pull more materials for pre-teaching. And I'm just going to keep cruising until y'all stop me, okay? All right, so materials for case management. You want data from your students. That's one main thing that you need to have to be able to go ahead and give to these case managers. These case managers need to have a good idea of who their student is that they're assigned, or students that they're assigned. So some things you might include might be grades, screener results, test scores, behavior data, attendance data. There can be anecdotal notes, anything you think that that person needs to really truly know who that child is. And then you want to think about who's your bank of personnel or people to support as case managers. Again, this, as well as the materials for the pre-teaching, can really be discussed and combed through in that ILT or literacy team meeting. You want to think about schedules for students to meet with their case managers. How often do you think they need to meet to be successful, not just for the innovation, but to be successful for that student to really feel like they are a case manager or an advocate for them? And I think about a teacher case manager communication log so that the teacher can be aware of what's happening, the case manager can be aware of what's happening, and considering the teacher's schedule. The teacher is responsible for so many different things, juggling so many balls. So that communication log, if it's a spreadsheet or something, they can just go a peek at when they have time and put up like a little initial or a date next to it to, indicate that they saw it, but we're not like just sending like tons and tons of emails from the different case managers. Possible outline for case managers to process the data and support students. And we've talked about that. So if you have any more questions about any of those things, we set up a one-on-one and we dive more into materials for family literacy engagement, the data to determine the needs for the family. So why you need to know why you would bring them together. Is it what are students struggling with that the parents need to work on them with? Instructional supports from the curriculum or from any intervention programs that families can use. And you can see those pre-teaching materials for more help there. A schedule for the families to come learn how to use the materials with their child. Personnel who will lead this session. What kind of modeling are you going to have? What is guided practice going to look like? What kind of independent application would they have? And what would they do for reflection? And again, a communication log is a fantastic thing to have to get feedback on how successful was it? Do the parents know to where to go after they leave this engagement session for more help if they need it? Just that open line of communication between parents and the other stakeholders. Okay, so I keep talking about ILT, but these are some other structures to plan around and develop the materials that are needed. The pre-teaching especially really should not be like one person making that and then just disseminating it. It also shouldn't just be told to teachers to, hey, go figure out what you're doing for pre-teaching. A great place to have this happen is inside of a teacher collaboration. You might call it a PLC or a cluster, whatever you call it. Having somebody lead and guide the teachers through a true planning and knowing where to go to look for those materials and purposely planning for them. Another great place is other professional learning opportunities. So as a part of this grant, there's substantial funding that's attached to it. After school planning or stipends are absolutely available. So if there's not enough time in the school day and teachers are willing and wanting some after school money, stipends can definitely be given for them to do some planning there for the pre-teaching, any of them really, but especially that one. And then also consider any vendor coaching or planning that you may need as well, because in order for teachers to really plan around pre-teaching materials, they really need to understand their curricular resources, period. So if they truly don't understand their curricular resources, that'll just help them anyway. And funding can be used for either or both of those things that they may need. Okay. So the last little piece of like getting ready to do this is the tracking the success of the innovation. So my favorite thing to say about things that we don't know if they work is my spaghetti analogy. If we don't know it's working, we're throwing spaghetti on the wall, we're hoping it's sticking, but we have no idea. So when you start these innovations, be really intentional about thinking about what data are you going to pull to determine if the innovation is successful or not. These are just some examples. You might have other ones, you might have additional ones, but determine what it's going to look like. It could be graded assignments. Sticking as close to the curriculum and to the high quality instructional materials as possible. A great place to go is graded assignments from the curriculum to determine if it's effective. Any progress monitoring data. A lot of these students, if they're urgent intervention needed labels, they probably are in some kind of intervention. So you can use progress monitoring data. You can use screener data, but it should not be the only measure. We should have some additional measures that you're looking at. It could be survey data from either parents, case managers, teachers, or even the students themselves to determine how successful do they feel inside of the innovation. The one that's tricky for that is the case management one. because there's other layers than just materials and grades. So a survey might be a great thing for that one. Feedback, both oral or written, walk through data of the teachers and the students implementing the innovation, and state testing data. All of these are different data sources that can be considered to determine, is the innovation successful or not? Okay. Before I go to additional considerations, I want to just ask, do we have any questions yet? I know this is new and you're probably already still trying to process, but if I have any questions, I want to take them. Okay. Okay, so other things I want you to consider, we're going to talk more about these in SSI, but how is this helping me achieve my goals in my literacy plan? So whatever innovation you're doing, whatever materials you have, however you're tracking it, how is that particular piece helping you meet your goals inside of your literacy plan? What overall or summative data do you want to use? And what progress monitoring data do you want to use to determine the effectiveness of that innovation? When and where will students be pulled, or where and when will parents be brought together? So start considering that. Who is responsible for performing the innovation? There's different levels of responsibility. You know, it starts with the admin team, which is why I'm so adamant. It's part of the grant anyway, but it's why I'm so adamant about having those stakeholders at the SSI, because it starts with them. It starts with the admin. The administration have to be on board for us to really make this successful. They are the teaching and leading, they're leading the teaching community on their campuses, and they really have to be bought into this. So they're ultimately responsible. You as the literacy innovation coordinator are responsible, but then we have some other responsible parties, and we need to know what their roles are and how we're helping to support all the different layers. What training is needed for staff to perform the innovation, and when will that training occur? We know better, we do better. And so if teachers all knew how to do all these things, they would already be doing them because they love our kiddos. So what training do they need to really be successful in this? What materials are needed for the innovation? I'm not going to get into hugely to the hexagon analysis just yet, because my new people that are coming on board, some of you have come on board very recently, and I don't want your heads to explode. So we'll talk about the hexagon analysis tool later, but it's a measure that we look to see how successful a program is, and it considers many different factors. I have this one highlighted in yellow because it's important. I really want you to consider, when you're doing this work, what is needed to track the subgroups that are being targeted. So, you're looking at data for all the students, but being really intentional about the ones that are causing the label. Are you going to keep that information on a spreadsheet and a binder? When are you going to have conversations around it? But really being intentional with that subgroup data to determine if the innovation is helping them in particular. Okay. We'll take a quick stroll down the resources that we have, and then I'm going to then I have some time for you to collaborate. So the very first thing, we are constantly adding to our literacy library. The newest thing in there is definitely our literacy screener page. There's different resources there. Diverse learners and a literacy alternate assessment, administration guides for all the different grade levels. They have family reporting templates, and they have training videos that's constantly being added to. We also have, in our first pillar, literacy plan guidance and individual student literacy plan templates. So if students score below, some of the legislation that passed recently was for those students to have an individual student literacy plan, and that's communicated with parents. So we have all those templates there available for you. Something that there are three main resources that we've developed in the last year and a half are our content literacy series, our fire kit, and our lift kit. And so if you don't know about those, please make sure you ask about them, because they're fantastic free resources that you can be using with your teachers. So before I jump into upcoming events, let me go back. I want to go ahead and give you time to collaborate with each other, to ask any questions you might have of each other. And I can get you started off if you want. I can pose a question and get everybody kind of started, unless you have something that you want to get started with. And I know my veteran people don't mind if I pick on them. So
I have
Brandy,
a general question.
yeah, go ahead and ask.
How soon can we get this slide deck?
I can send you the slide deck today.
Okay,
The
awesome.
recording will probably be available because I have to send it to comms to get a YouTube link and all that. That'll probably be
Oh
available
yeah,
closer to
I
next week.
understand that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm just looking at the hyperlinks and things that I'd like to review and print out,
absolutely.
possibly. Okay, thank you.
You got it. I can send you that today.
Okay, thanks.
You got it. Brandy, what do you think has been the most successful inside of what have you done to make successful the pre-teaching innovation successful?
The first thing we started with was the schedule,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that we explicitly state in our master schedules 30 minutes for pre-teaching. So every one of our master schedules have 30 minutes of pre-teaching and then 60 minutes of core.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very clearly stated in the schedule that this is what this time is designated for. We started that 2 years ago in the master schedules. And then last year, we added in 15 minutes for the fire lessons. And so our ELA, and we actually, based on our data and opportunity for growth for students, we extended fire into sixth grade. And so all of our third through sixth grade schedules explicitly state 15 minutes fire, 30 minutes pre-teaching, 60 minutes core instruction. That was critical for us just because prior to that, it just said, here's your ELA block
Mm-hmm.
of 90 minutes, or here's your ELA, this window is your ELA block. And so what we found was we were spending, although we were saying we were doing pre-teaching or we were saying to do it, it wasn't happening because the time wasn't explicitly designated to that. So that was our biggest change that we made, and we saw the greatest impact from making that change.
Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
And I know my pre-teaching people are just getting started with materials and all those things, but that's a great thing to consider that we didn't talk about. But just making sure that it happens because you're setting aside that time, you're making it non-negotiable that it is happening. I don't have anybody that's doing the pre-teaching. It's available to be done in a pullout or a small group. I don't have any system doing it that way. Everybody seems to be doing it whole class, whole group. You are welcome to play with that though. It's just ensuring you're pulling those subgroups that cause the designation.
We actually do it small group.
Okay.
It's on the schedule. Here's your 30, this is your 30 minutes of pre-teaching time.
Uh-huh.
But we actually have worked with teachers doing it small group, trying to individualize students that need that vocabulary support. They're pulling that small group of students that they know are going to need that vocabulary support. Other students may be building knowledge through reading topic text. And so we really work to make sure that we're giving groups of students what they need in order to be successful in grade level core. So we do small groups.
Brandon, one thing we've never talked about, how do you help facilitate planning for teachers to come up with those things?
So it is, they definitely need the support in the planning. And just, we had to start with thinking through the difference between intervention and pre-teaching. So we had to start with that. So what are we planning for? We always start with we have to start with our core lesson. What are students learning in the core lesson? What data do we have, formative data do we have prior to this to help us know what students are going to need to be able to access that grade level core? So we had to sit side by side with teachers, just like you sit with teachers helping them internalize their core lesson. We're sitting with teachers helping them internalize what needs to happen to small groups of students in core support time, or pre-teaching time. Some of our students are, some of our teachers are using those fluency tasks with foundational supports because that's what those students need. And so you just have to really, it starts with that planning process together though.
I love it. One thing that Valverde is great with is there's a whole culture of literacy. I went and visited Valverde, and you had the PE teacher doing literacy work on the side. You had the cafeteria workers talking about literacy. It was just you could tell it was a whole school-wide initiative. The students felt so comfortable in their learning environments, and it was just a great place to be. I would love to learn there. I would love my kids to love to learn there. I know that's what we're all trying to have at our own schools.
Absolutely. But we did learn that um, we have to be very intentional with the support we provide the people that we say are going to do the supports for students. We have to make sure that we equip them with the knowledge and skills to be able to give students what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we've moved from just having it on the schedule or just saying this person's going to do it to really looking at student outcomes and how are we going to make sure that the students are getting what they need by training the individuals that are going to be providing the support.
How did you facilitate that training, Brandy?
Well, it depended on, depending on what tool we were using. So Spire is our third and up tool. We had Spire come in, do PD with the teachers or individuals that were going to be providing the supports. We trained our leaders and we trained our instructional coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So that way the training didn't stop the day of the training.
Yes.
Like it's ongoing, it's constant that we're going in, making sure that the progress is happening for students and that it's the right instruction that's happening for those students. And so it's an ongoing thing.
Thanks for sharing. That's one thing I want to point out to you guys. I know some of us are doing pre-teaching, some of us aren't, but we're all working on general literacy practices on our campuses to improve. And so that's definitely one thing I wanted to point out. Making sure, one thing we will work on in SSI as well is making sure that all of these systems are kind of interlaced. Your core meets the need, like it talks to your intervention, it talks to your assessment, everything's kind of aligned to make these decisions. And then one thing, Allen Parish isn't on with us today because they're one of my veteran ones that have a one-on-one. But one thing you'll get to hear if you're in my Lafayette cohort, if you're with us there, whether you're not, I'll have Stacy hop on with us one time too. Them, Point Coupé, they're geniuses at making sure that all of the training is really aligned and that everybody is getting the training needed, and they're both seeing substantial growth for that reason. As we start to adopt new programs, we've had a lot of ESSER money happening in the last 2-3 years. We've bought a lot of programs. It goes back to that spaghetti analogy, throwing it against the wall, hoping it sticks. Really try to be intentional about getting training around the core. Do your teachers really know how to implement all of the pieces of your core program? And you'll know they are because research states that you should have 80 to 85 proficiency. Students in those classes, 80 to 85% of them should be proficient coming out of a core lesson. So if you have a ton of students who need intervention, it's because there's something happening with the core. And 9 times out of 10, it's because those teachers need more support in core training. And then likewise, if you have an intervention program and that intervention program is not moving students, 9 times out of 10, it's again because those teachers and stakeholders need more training in that. And so that should be a number one priority to ensure that growth is happening outside of your innovation, talking about just general best literacy practices. Any other general, and Miss Antoinette, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
Can you talk just really briefly about how you partner with parents? Like what are some ways to get parents in and involved?
Yes. One of the things that we do with parents, well, last year we had 2 part-time parent engagement coaches. We looked at student data, we talked with the classroom teachers, and those students that were struggling, those part-time family engagement coaches met with those parents and they did some one-on-one coaching and provided one-on-one opportunities to model how they could work with their child in order to increase their child's achievement in school. Overall, at the K-3 level, we looked at the overall grade level deficits using Dibble scores. And based on that, we built modules and we did the bi-monthly we did bi-weekly parent engagement meetings at the 5 schools. Some were virtual, some were face-to-face. Parents they have our contact information. They would call us. We would, if they needed something. We also purchased books to support the curriculum for EL as well as for guidebooks. And with each module, we sent those books home with the students. So they had the literature at home that they were using to support the curriculum as well. So there were a number of things we did, but the modules were very successful. We were able to, and we used the Florida Center for Reading Research. There is a whole family engagement piece there where you can pull, and we build modules from various places. I hope I answered your question.
You did so well. And again, like that's family engagement is an innovation, but it's also a best practice to have inside of schools and school systems. Engage those families.
And not only do we do that family engagement piece, we also coach teachers. I know that's, a little bit in addition to our signature innovation. But
that's the other hat we should be wearing. Absolutely. Yeah.
We go in and we work with those teachers side by side, coaching, modeling, and whatever they need. If they're missing resources. And know this summer, we started using the vendor to do training for our curricular resources, because the teachers had training, some of them, but it was like a one-day, I call them a drive-by-night training.
Yeah.
That's not true training. So one of our trainings, we looked at the standards for each grade level, and we made sure that the standards were aligned with the curricular resources. We saw the gaps in the curricular resources. And so now we know what supplemental materials to buy to support that curriculum, and not just purchasing stuff that's really not effective. So we're excited about the work that we're doing.
As you should be, because you're both just showing substantial growth. And so my new people, my new literacy innovation coordinators, you guys are in good company, because the best place in education to hear it from is to hear it from people that are making it work and making it happen. And I'm just so incredibly proud of both of these ladies that are on with us again, as I know I'm going to be incredibly proud of all of you as we move through this year and we work towards progress. So if there's no other questions or no other share outs, I'm going to go ahead and talk about some next meetings. And then we can go ahead and get on with our happy Friday, huh? Okay, so our School Support Institute will kick off next week on Monday, September 11th. I will be in Monroe, and so I'll get to see you, Catahoula. And then Tuesday, I will be in Shreveport, where I'll get to see, I don't think Bosier's on with me right now, but I'll get to see Bossier. They're another one of my veteran ones, so they didn't have to be on. But Wednesday, I'll be in Lafayette, so I'll be seeing a good bit of you in Lafayette, and then I'll be seeing all the rest of you, which is a big old group, in Baton Rouge on Thursday. So if I look a hot mess, that's why, because when you go from day to day in a different hotel, you start looking a hot mess by the end of it. The next set of meetings for School Support Institute will not be until the week of October 16th, and they will be a half-day virtual day, okay? So there's 2 mandatory things for the grant. The one is that you attend COPs. You're here. I thank you, once a month. They will be tied to, and I sent you guys all the long range plan. You'll see what the topic is each week, but I tied them as closely to the innovation as possible, because we don't discuss the innovation in School Support Institute. School Support Institute will just be best practices inside of literacy and inside of curriculum. So I'll see you for that half day during that week of October 16th. Our next COP will be Friday, October 13th at 11 a.m. It's always that second Friday in the month at 11 a.m. So if you don't have any other questions, you guys can always reach me at natalie.cleavier@ala.gov. I think I gave everybody, let me stop sharing. I think I gave everybody my, and stop recording.